And then I have to remember to put myself like where I need to be, because I tried to set it up so you could see this.
Yeah.
There we go.
I'm excited to see that you tried the octopus. I'm impressed.
Yeah, I have reasons. There were fewer things to cut out for the octopus.
Yeah.
Those are the reasons. Okay, so 6 o'clock. That means I think we're ready to start. We're recording. We're gonna run through it. So this is our 3D cardboard assembly workshop with Amy Hoagland, who is actually our winter resident artist, as part of a team with Jenny. And you are a sculptor, and Jenny is a research psychologist. And did I say that right? Is that the right name for her?
That's right.
Okay. And we are partnering this winter with Nest Studio for the Arts, which is a program at CU Boulder designed to connect artists and scientists through project support. And so we're super psyched to partner with you guys, and that you've made yourself available as part of that residency to do a workshop with us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So your project is essentially, I mean, it's really this process, like writ large. Cool.
Yes, that's very accurate.
Cool. So in this workshop, it's going to be kind of split into two parts. And the first part is a demonstration from Amy of the software and the kind of planning process. And then we'll switch back to watching me try and figure out how to do this along with Amy's instruction. So thanks. Okay, so I'm gonna switch it now so that we can do a screen share of the presentation that you've prepared.
Perfect. That sounds good.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, first off, I just want to say thank you to Brandy for that introduction, and thanks to Firehouse and Nest Center for the Arts for supporting me and Jenny Cole on our project. We're super excited to have an installation done in February that will double as a psychological study. I'm so excited that you guys are here today and excited to share with you how to create your own cardboard creations. So maybe you've seen me working at Firehouse or have come in and seen these sculptures, but this is what I've been essentially working on during my residency here. And what they are is layered, stacked cardboard that has been laser cut. I'm working with 3D scanned rocks that come from Clear Creek Canyon. And atop of them, I'm using a mixed media process, incorporating recycled materials like sawdust, the cardboard and paper, along with some paint. So the process within my work that I'm using to create these 3D scanned objects, there's a lot of different ways to 3D scan, but what I'm using is called photogrammetry. And so photogrammetry is defined by the American Society of Photogrammetry and Remote Sensing as the art, science, and technology of obtaining reliable information about physical objects in the environment through processes of recording, measuring, and interpreting imagery. And so when I'm working, I'll go out on a hike and I'll take a lot of images around an object. This is an example of a few images from one of the rocks that I'm working with for the Firehouse installation. I usually take about 70 images in several different positions around the rock, incorporating detail shots as well. And in order to create these scans, I use a software that's called Agisoft PhotoScan. So I just wanted to show you guys what that is and what that process looks like. It's available for a desktop free trial for, I think, 30 days. So this is the software. And it's specifically a photogrammetry software. So what I do is I'll initially create a chunk that all of the photos get uploaded into. And this is just a rock on a white background, which makes it a lot easier for the program to process rather than it being outside in the real environment, which is often how I do my scans. And so what's happening now, I've uploaded the images and now the program is starting to stitch them together when I align the photos. And what's happening there is that it's looking for points on the pictures that line up to create the 3D file that can be later edited to become a sculpture. So it's detecting its points, and then eventually we'll see a point cloud. Which a point cloud is the starting point that becomes the 3D file later that can be manipulated and edited. So what we see here is the point cloud, and you can see the rock roughly, and then also the white sheet of paper that was around it. And now you can see the rings of photos that were taken around it at different levels to create good amounts of detail. And now sometimes the program isn't perfect and you need to manually go in and pick points and attach images, and that's possible with this too. And so you can see the photos taken. And you can also see the photo number that correlates to the image if you need to go back. And so after I have a 3D file, I use the software that I'll show to you a little bit later in this presentation to create slices that I then send over to a laser cutter to laser cut and essentially create a large puzzle to put together. So once I have my pieces cut, they're labeled with numbers, and then I stack them together to become the sculptures. And it's kind of a time-consuming, fun process to mix and match and figure out what goes where, as they're not cut in order usually. But I enjoy it, and so that's how it starts. And then I end up assembling it with glue and adding a mixed media process atop of it. So here you're looking at some different paints and pastels and paper that I'm using as a lichen-like texture, which is the green. So that's recycled paper. And what's really great about this software is it's becoming really accessible. You can do this on your phone, which is awesome. So as I mentioned, the Agisoft photo scan that I use does a free 30-day desktop trial, and it works on Mac and Windows. Some phone apps to try: Trineo, which is $5, Scandy Pro, Displayland, and the Scanner app for Android. And all of these, they're just sort of fun to mess around with. Oftentimes your phone needs a pretty high processing power in order for it to work. So for me, on my older phone, it doesn't work as well. But if you have a newer phone and higher processing power, some of these apps might work really well. Like I know the iPhone X has a sort of like just a better camera than most phones. And so I tried the Scanner app for the Android the other day, just seeing what I would get from one of these phone apps. And I 3D scanned my dog, so you can see him lying beside the bed. And I'm trying to zoom in on that for you to see. But it's exciting because these programs are accessible and you can just try them at home for fun in your free time, or you might end up, using it for something more creative as well. That was my dog beside the bed. It was just a fun little experiment. So if you don't have the ability to create your own 3D scans or want to, essentially just want to get access to 3D files really quickly, there's a lot of free open source file websites. Thingyverse, which is, in my opinion, the best, Sketchfab, TurboSquid, Yegi, CG Trader are all interesting options to browse. I just want to show you Thingyverse because it's, I think, so accessible and easy to use. So here I've searched for tree, and as you can see, there's this light up Christmas tree here. The type of file that you're able to download off of these sites is often an STL file, which is 3D printable, but also editable in 3D software, such as the Slicer program that I'll show you later that was used to create the templates for what will become your cardboard creations. So you can see there's a tree, a little stump pencil holder, and you can just browse through this and get ideas. For instance, there's these little Christmas trees that could be sliced and create a template in the same way that we will work today, and you could take a mold off of these and create little candles, for instance. There's just a wide range of possibilities. So I'll just show you through. If you click on a file, so you can see this is a rock bridge. I think it's a prop for a fish tank, actually, so it can be 3D printed, as you can see there. And so the way you download, you go to the thing files, and then you'll hit download here. And some things to keep in mind, you always want to check the licensing on these files. So it's copyrighted, it can't be sold, and you need to attribute the author. So that's important to take note of. Some of these files on here are just completely free and can be sold, but oftentimes they are property of the author, the artist who created them. So you have to consider that, and there's even an opportunity to tip the designer if you really like something you find. For editing files, I really like Meshmixer. I find the software super easy to use. It's very user-friendly. It's available on Macs and PCs. And I would just recommend, if you're interested in trying out 3D modeling, just to download it. It even has test files like this bunny, and you can just get on there and mess around with it and have a little bit of fun. And so in order to create the templates that you guys are looking at today, I'll show you the Octopus I worked with. So I've got it uploaded into the software called Slicer, which is an Autodesk software. It's free as well. And one thing to note is the manufacturing settings that I'll go over here. So right now it's set to a letter size, which is the size of a sheet of paper, but you can see that the thickness is thicker than a sheet of paper, and I'm doing that because I know I'm going to eventually cut the form out of cardboard, so the thickness is relative to a sheet of cardboard. And this is important because if you're laser cutting or creating templates, you want to put in the material that you'll be cutting from, whether it's plexiglass or wood or cardboard, and you want to know its thickness so that the form, when it is sliced, will amount to the same dimensions. And so right now I've got the object size set at 8 inches by about 2 inches by about 8 inches in length. And I might change that later, but I'll just look at the construction techniques first. So there's a lot of different options on here, and it depends on your form. As you can see, like the interlock slices don't necessarily work with the size of my octopus right now. You could also do radial slices. folded panels is pretty cool. It's something I have not experimented with much, but it's sort of like origami. But we're going to look at the stack slices. So as you can see, when I select that, it slices the octopus. But you're seeing this blue around the edges of its tentacles, and that's not a good sign. That means the pieces aren't lining up properly. So I'm going to change the slice direction and rotate the octopus around a bit to get there. And so on the side, I'm able to toggle to pan the object or rotate the object, which helps move around the form. And sometimes it just takes a little finagling to get it right. So now I've got the pan to create the slice. That's still not quite what I want, so play with it a little more. As you can see, if you look on the right side at the cut layout, I have all of these really tiny pieces, and that would be really hard to cut out. So I'm trying to get something that would be easier and more approachable. And okay, that looks a lot better. So now you can see the pieces are longer and easier to cut out. And the form doesn't have that blue around the edges of the tentacles anymore. So that's telling you that it can be cut out and assembled properly. Now, I think I want to make it a little bigger, so I'm going into the height and making it 12 inches tall, about a foot, and that ends up being 6 printer sheets of paper. And when I scale the size, it scales the width and length at the same time. And so assembly steps is nice because you can select whatever material you're using. So I'm using cardboard, so I have that selected. And as I scroll through here, you can see to the right by the assembly page that it's highlighting the pieces as I go. And actually, I'll rotate it a little more so you guys can see the layers better. But it's helpful to see this, to see which pieces, if you lose track of where things go, you can see how they should go. And then to get plans, you click on Get Plans and it shows you your template. And so depending on what you plan on doing with the template, you might download it as a PDF just to print to create a template in the same way as what we're doing in this workshop, to trace and cut from cardboard, for instance. Or for me, if I'm laser cutting, I'll download it as a DXF, which then I can import in Illustrator and edit a little more. Sometimes there's a little more processing to do. And that is Autodesk Slicer. And so now I'll talk with Brandy about how she's doing making her cardboard sculpture. I'll just run over the steps real quick. So essentially you have your template, you can print your file, we'll cut the paper. You'll use the paper as a template and trace the shapes onto cardboard. And it's really important to write the number of each piece on the piece you cut out so that you know essentially what part of the puzzle it belongs to. You'll cut the cardboard next and you'll assemble the cardboard with glue following the numbers, and then you'll have a sculpture. You can add paint and mixed media for texture. And I'll stop my screen share there. How's it going, Brandy?
All right, that was so much so fast. I feel like software is one of those things where it's really so helpful that you did the kind of overview to give a reference for which software is useful for which part of the process. So that's really, really cool. I took some notes while you were doing it because looking at your presentation on my screen, it was kind of hard. I'll probably be able to look back later, but I have a question.
Okay.
When you are in the software telling it how you want to slice it, the file, and you tell it what type of material you're using, are you able to control the relative thickness of that material?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
So that's the most important part. You've got to
Right.
get a little decimeter and measure your material, because if you put in the wrong thickness, your sculpture is going to turn out looking a little stretched or skewed in one direction that you don't necessarily want.
Yeah. So in the instructions we prepared for this workshop, I'm pretty sure we wrote that a 1/4 inch cardboard was the recommended to go with the PDF files. Okay. So I just want to make sure everybody knows that even if they take the example files that you provided, that a 1/4 inch cardboard is what it's designed to work with. So
yeah, that was just a test little demo I went through for thinner cardboard.
Cool. That's awesome. I think some of my cardboard was different than others because I used leftover Christmas material, so this is going to be really entertaining.
Right. I mean, so the shapes, it's just kind of like skewing the form in Photoshop, for instance. If you just stretch an image a little, it'll just be a little different.
Cool.
And that's sometimes interesting.
Yeah, I'm into it. Another thing that's really fun is that you use Autodesk software. And I know that they have at one of their offices here in Boulder, which is kind of fun. People always love to know like what's even remotely local, and we can say that some of the software that you're using might be somewhat local, which is kind of fun.
That's kind of fun. I didn't think of it that way.
Yeah. So where are we now? Now we're at the point where so you've chosen your image, you've prepared like a PDF of the slices you want to do, which is kind of where we prepped everyone starting the workshop. I printed one of the PDFs that we provided through Eventbrite. And I do want to mention also that at the end of this, we are recording this, and it will be on the Firehouse's YouTube channel. And so in that description, we'll put information about the software guide that you have and links to the PDFs in a supply list, so that in future, if anybody missed some part of this live thing, that information will be on the Firehouse's YouTube channel. And I believe it's Firehouse Art Center, Longmont. So good to know. I printed those. I taped them to sheets of cardboard. So what I did, and tell me where, because I saw in your like prep example images that you took the printer paper and then cut the shapes out and then traced it onto cardboard and then cut the shapes. What I did, because I'm real cheap about time, is I just taped the paper, like the PDF, to a piece of cardboard, and then I just cut like both.
Yeah, so, I think that works.
Okay. So what I have though that made me very nervous is that each of your, when it prints out from that software, they all have numbers on them.
Right.
So what I have is essentially like a bucket full of pieces that I put numbers on, but I don't know what those numbers, like they're all mixed in. There's no order at all. So tell me what to do.
Right. So you've got your labeled number pieces. I have a big sheet of cardboard that will cover my face. This is the skull.
Oh, look at that.
I haven't cut it out yet, but it's got all of the numbers on there. So you'll want to basically look at the numbers and start ordering them. So if you got 15, add 14 below, 13, 12, and then add on top of that. So what I do usually is I'll start creating stacks of the numbers relating together instead of just trying to start from like 1, because that ends up being pretty difficult.
I don't need these anymore though, right? Like I just need my cardboard.
Yeah, so you just need your cardboard. So Brandy's gone through her template. She's got her pieces cut out already.
Woo.
She's ahead of the game.
I was prepped. We were talking about how long it takes to cut the pieces, and I was like, we're gonna Julia Child this. We're gonna maybe like talk about how to cut one piece and then pull all the rest of them out of the oven.
Right.
Do we want to do that? Do we want to talk about the logistics of cutting cardboard, or do we want to trust that people know how to do that?
I actually, for what I did, the rock that showed on the Eventbrite, I just used scissors.
Oh.
And I cut the whole thing out with scissors. Whereas the skull, you might need an X-acto knife to get some of these pieces that, like the eyes. As you can see there, you have some interior pieces. So in order to cut those out,
this is a piece from the Octopus X-acto knife.
Yeah, definitely.
Fresh blade. That's another one.
Right. It makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Never forget.
To forget about.
To get a fresh blade.
Spend hours cutting and then realize, wow, I have a dull blade.
Or it like tears at the edges. If you get a fresh blade, it's like butter. It's wonderful. Okay, so because of the fact that you cut out your paper and then you traced it, you used scissors on a lot of yours, which is pretty cool. On mine, I discovered I actually ended up doing like sheets of 2 different types of cardboard. So one of them had a really tight weave. There's cardboard is essentially like 2 pieces of flat paper glued on top of this wavy U structure to give it its depth and its lack of weight. And because I'm using leftover Christmas packaging, I have 2 different essentially types of cardboard that I ended up using. And one of them was like a very tight little wavy thing and it was smooth. And the other one was much looser. So when I got to my curvy bits, some of them just sort of half fell apart. Like as I was, see if I can put it in front of my face.
I can't. Oh, I can sort of see that. Yeah.
See that? See where it like, it's sort of, whatever's holding it together comes off. So if that happens, like I left mine because I'm not zenning out on this the way that I might ideally. But if you are really into a design that you love, I would say pay attention to your quality of cardboard. I don't know. How has your experience been with that?
So that will happen on the smaller detail pieces, but I find once you glue, it's like not perfect, but once you glue it together, it pushes those, like if it's like kind of fraying up off of the corrugation part, it pushes that back together and it becomes better. But like Brandy's saying, if you want to not deal with that, if you have higher quality, denser cardboard, it won't be as much of an issue.
Okay. Corrugation, that's the word. Thank you. Yeah, it's the corrugation. Okay.
Yeah, this is definitely a great way to recycle your Christmas packaging if you still have it around.
Right. I thought that too. And I will also say we can throw in here a little plug for Woodies Fine Furniture here in Longmont will donate cardboard to any community project or individual. Like if you're a LARPer and you need a lot of cardboard, Woodies Fine Furniture is the place to be. They're amazing. So, all right. So how do you want to, where do we go from here? Do we want to talk about so I have this essentially like a bucket of these pieces with numbers, and you were saying they go like from 1 is at the bottom?
It depends on the form. So what I would start doing is just matching up numbers that go consecutively. So it doesn't have to start from a specific number, but as long as they're one after another or one before another, then you'll start to get the shape.
Okay. There's 5.
And some of them, so I think the Octopus has like dash several different numbers. And essentially what that means is it's on the same layer, but it's separate parts, but it'll end up being on the same plane, if that makes sense.
That does make sense, because like I have 5, let me see if I can hold it up so you can really see it. One of these is 5-1 and one of these is 5-3. So that means it's the same vertical layer, but it's in a different location. So that means they're different parts of they're different tentacles.
Yeah, so the same, I think probably horizontal layer actually. And so it'll be the 5th layer up. Yeah.
Y-axis?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, maybe while I try and assemble by like try and arrange by number over here, you can tell us a little bit about your sculptural program that you're in, potentially. Like, where are you? What are you up to? Tell me about you.
Right. So I'm in my 2nd year MFA program at CU Boulder. My focus is in sculpture. I'm basically halfway through the program right now. I'll be going into the spring semester coming up this fall, teaching basic sculpture to the undergrads. And so far, I've really enjoyed my time at CU, and it's been an incredible experience. I've met a lot of really great people, learned some wonderful things. But a lot of my work does revolve around this 3D scanning and creating sculptures from the scans. So I've been continuing to build that within my practice, which you guys are getting a nice little insight into that now here with this workshop.
How unique is that within the sculpture program? Like, do you find that, are you the only person doing that? Or is that like there's lots of other people for you to talk to?
I think I've found over the past few years, it's more frequent that people are working in this way. Within our current program, there isn't anyone at CU doing what I'm like the scanning type of stuff, but it is, we have the facilities to do a lot of it. And there's actually a class that I haven't taken that's in digital fabrication that you can learn a lot of these processes. So it's available and accessible to everyone. I think they're really fun processes just to get to know and then see how it can move your practice in one direction or another.
Hey, Amy.
Yes.
I think I'm missing some pieces, because I think the lowest number I have layer-wise is like 5 or 4.
That's okay. It's not perfect. Like, you just have to go in order.
Okay.
Sometimes the pieces, because the file or the program slices things in such a way, some of the slices will be very tiny, and I actually ended up deleting them from the templates.
Okay.
So yeah, it's not verbatim 1 through whatever. It's so like what you're seeing, it's 5 through the end number.
Okay, that's really good to know, because I was sitting here looking for 1 or 2, like just so I can know where the bottom of my stack might be.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have them. So that, oh, here's 1. All right, hold on. And it's a tentacle, which is kind of fun because that'll make it a little bit more 3D, I guess. An extra fun littleness. Okay, all right. I think I understand what's going on here. I'd like to think. I don't really know. We'll see. Okay, so I laid them all out.
So you've got them laid out.
just so I can see the, all of the labels. Now what?
So you've said your first number was 4 or 5.
So there's like a little, there's like, okay, so a couple of these pieces say 3. But how do you feel about, like, I kind of want to start with some larger pieces and then maybe
Yeah,
I can glue
that's,
these
I
under.
mean, I think that's the easiest way to work, is to start just working with the larger pieces, because the smaller pieces will end up being detail pieces. I think primarily on the top of this one.
Okay. That's fun. So even
And
like technically, I could even just start in the middle. Like I know based
yeah,
on like the template itself, I know that this is the head of my octopus, right? So I could even say this one says 11. So that means that 12 is going to go on top of it. Are there any notes or advice for how to align them?
no, just see what works. So it'll make sense once you start to line them up, and then you'll kind of visualize where it should go. So sometimes you have to shift things down. For instance, when I did the rock, I started from the middle, and then it, tapers down outward. So you actually go from large to smaller on both sides. And then because of that, you kind of have to pull the cardboard slightly down. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Maybe. Well, I did notice that when you kind of moved your slices around in the software, your gimbal is like a sphere. Do
Yes.
you, in the software, is it like you pick an axis, or is it fully like a sphere? So you could end up with like odd angle, like not just.
It's possible. Yeah, I tried to make it as flat as possible. Sometimes the forms end up like a little diagonal, which sometimes is interesting. For these workshop files, they're pretty flat. But sometimes with my laser cut files, they end up going at an angle, and I think that can actually be a little interesting to see what happens.
Okay. Yes. So I'm basically essentially using the shape of the head as my general alignment guide, and I am stacking them up in numerical order. So I have, oh man, this is, you just can't see. All right.
There it is.
Yeah.
So you've got the nice curly tentacle,
right?
done with this sharp X-acto knife. Definitely helpful.
It's interesting that there's a hole kind of developing in the middle here.
Yeah, there's just that's just there in the center, which actually, for workshop participants that want to do the octopus that haven't done it, you don't have to cut out the hole, but that's just an aesthetic thing at the bottom. So that's the bottom piece, or close to the bottom piece.
It's like it's interesting. It slices it through a couple pieces, like it just gives it a little hook. But that's kind of fun, because then it like is ready to hang on my wall,
right,
as a decorative. Or I can like glue a magnet in there, and this is my new best fridge magnet.
Yes, there's so many possibilities.
Yeah. Okay, so really what I'm doing, I haven't even glued anything yet. I'm just stacking it all up, so I even just have a sense of what is gonna happen here. 18, 19.
Which I recommend what Brandy's doing, where she's stacking it all together before gluing. I think that's really smart, because then that helps you align things and change it as you go once you see it as a whole. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I just was looking around my mat, and I found a piece from kind of the middle. that I had forgotten. So that's interesting. And I've picked a point in the sculpture to really align everything. And that's the top of the head, because it seems to be the most consistent. Even though I feel like ideally, like I've lined up the head as though it's flat here, but I feel like it's probably really not. Like I bet.
Yeah, I think you can shift things in a little to create a slight like gradation towards the upper. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Amy, talk to us about your favorite glue. What type of glue do you like?
I really love wood glue. That's what I was originally working with for these sculptures. It's just really strong. But, you know, I've got my Elmers glue right beside me. Also perfect for this little at-home craft, as it's non-toxic. And, I mean, just it works pretty well. So I'm a fan.
Oh, yeah. We actually did a project last year at the end of 2019 with an artist named Justin Favela, who does a lot of installation work. And he told me when we were installing that Elmers is archival, because the material, like the way that they make it so that it's non-toxic, has the side effect of it being like a fine art, like archival product. Like it's not going to disintegrate your paper over time.
Interesting.
Which I thought, cool.
That makes me feel way better, because I was collaging with it the other day and just mixing it with water to water it down to collage. And I was like, oh, I was just using Elmer's glue because it was what I had at home, but it's archival. That's great.
Yeah.
That's really
good. So if you're scrapbooking and collaging and you want to make your stuff last forever and do it affordably, the professionals tell me that Elmer's is the way to go. See, and now like as I'm going back and sort of looking at my layers and breaking them down a little more, thinking like I don't have to line up the top of the head like I first did, I'm starting to see more of a variation in how the tentacles line up.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, so going from whatever's the thickest, it'll always be a little thinner, and then it'll sort of be, I find, usually a little centered on the thicker piece beneath. So each thinner piece is relatively centered. Does that make sense?
When you say thicker or thinner, do you mean like wider? Yeah. Okay.
Larger. Yeah.
Okay.
Not your cardboard thickness.
Okay.
It's the same. Obviously.
Yeah. And I will say this, like the way that you said it was an aesthetic decision, but the way that there's like a kind of a hole in the center is actually very helpful as well to line up where these pieces should go depth-wise. So this is definitely, I'm really, really glad that I tried to like hold it in my hand and stack a few before applying glue, because like, so you can kind of see that's a bunch of different pieces lined up. So this is where one breaks and this is where another breaks. And when I first stacked them, I lined them up at the top for the head. Mm-hmm. But now I'm sort of seeing, like, paying attention to where the tentacles are and where this kind of hole is built in is also useful.
Yeah, the hole is kind of a registration point.
There you go. Registration point. That's the vocabulary. Okay. And then basically, we all know how to use Elmer's glue, I'd like to think. Yeah.
Yeah. But I always tell my students, I'm like, use it like, or if they're working with wood glue, use it like butter, like spread it out. You don't need a bunch, or else it's going to seep through the seams, which is fine because it'll dry clear if that does happen. It does sometimes happen, especially on the smaller pieces, but if you have a piece of scrap cardboard, you can use that to sort of spread the glue like butter. And I find that helpful for me.
Mm-hmm. I have like little chunks of mat board lying around sometimes.
Yeah, mat board works really well too.
Yeah,
really anything. Your finger also works.
Yeah, just don't eat it. I mean, I guess because everybody, that's the thing that makes it so cool, is that everybody knows that people will eat the Elmers. So it's made safely. Okay, so I kind of wish that I had prepped us with like a Julia Child chicken piece of this from here, so we could say, okay, let's say that I glued them all. Trying to think as we're like if we can shortcut any other troubleshooting issues. Like for example, all of these pieces that I have lined up so far are their numbers -1, which you've said indicates that, you know, it's like the center. And then if it's the same layer number dash a different number, so let's say 4-4 just means that it's the 4th layer y-axis,
right?
But in a different location corresponding to the number 4.
Definitely. So there's probably like a big centerpiece that says 4, and then you've got little tentacle pieces that say like 4-4, 4-1, 4-2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah. So if I were going to take all these little separate tentacle pieces and maybe start stacking them, I would know that 4-4 is right on top of 5-4.
Yes.
That's what we're thinking. Maybe.
Yeah. So those will go together, so you can pair them in that way as well.
And some of these are so tiny. I don't know that I even got numbers on them. That's okay. I now know that it's really important to label my cardboard cutout pieces with the numbers. It's really good. Question.
Yes.
This piece.
Okay.
Says 6-1, which I feel like would indicate to me that it's the 6th y-axis layer. It says 9, that says 10, 9, 7, 8, 7, 6. But it is not remotely shaped like any part of an octopus, and therefore I am extremely confused. That's okay. Let's see. 19, 11, yeah. I wonder if that means, do you see what I mean?
Yeah, and it's 6 and it would go in the middle?
Yeah, it says 6-1. So I have to assume that it's a middle piece somehow.
Right. So if I had the slicer app up right now, what I would do is I would go to my assembly steps and find the 6-1 and see where it's highlighted to see where this piece belongs.
Okay.
It's also possible it's just a piece that is extra, that is not completely necessary.
That's very interesting.
Because the program isn't perfect and there are glitches that happen since it's a free software.
Okay.
But it is, I'm not, it's pretty good overall.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, looking at putting these together now, I definitely get the sense that like, okay. Oh no. That's all right. But it definitely like has a curve to the top of it, and you just kind of have to pay attention as you go that the pieces you're stacking line up with the form as you anticipate it being. So I wonder if the next helpful thing that we can do is provide images of like screenshots maybe of the full 3D picture.
Yes, definitely.
So we'll add those.
Yes, I'll send that
to,
over
like where the
resources.
okay. I like that.
So
I
then
feel
you
like if I were to start
better
doing this now, we'd be here like all night and we would just be casually chatting. And then at some point I would get a beer and then.
I mean, it's kind of a relaxing process. It's in a way like paint by numbers, except like sculpture by numbers.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's kind of fun. I would recommend enjoying it casually and taking your time.
I think taking your time is a really good piece of advice for this. And I like the kind of, I love the way it makes me think about the object differently. Like in my head, I have to break down what, I mean, because I don't have like a reference, it's like putting together a 3D puzzle without having the picture on the box a little bit right now, which is really fun. But I think if I were to start with a file and the software as you described it, definitely taking my time. I was looking forward to the part in this process, and I'm still looking forward to it. I am gonna glue all this together where I can take the finished glued together object and then like paint that, like cover it in, you know, like if I were going to take this 3D cardboard object and then further embellish it. Do we want to talk about some ideas for how to do that, or?
There's so many things you could do. I mean, like you already said, it could become a magnet, or I mean, you could literally just paper mache on top of it. So make your own like wheat paste, or just, you know, working with Elmer's glue and water. You could work with paper and then sort of cover the texture of the cardboard and paint atop of that further. You could also make your own paper pulp and brush that on. That's what I do with a lot of my sculptures. I'm in some of my rocks, I'm working with sawdust and glue, and then painting that atop of the cardboard to just modify the cardboard texture a little further. And that's a pretty accessible thing you can do. Just go out to your garage if you have wood tools and take some of the sawdust, take some glue and water, and create a paste, and you can even add color to that as well.
I mean, once it's an assembled, glued together structure, you essentially have a sculpture that you can carve out of or add to.
Right.
And it's super cool that there's the free software that you talked about and that it's made from recycled materials. And so it's very like, anybody can do this. Hopefully, ideally. I don't know. We'll see. I'll probably mess it up. We'll find out. But thank you. Thank you for doing this workshop with us. Hopefully it was informative and helpful for anybody who might see it. I do want to say that we are available to answer questions that other people might have besides the ones that I tried to troubleshoot while looking at this. Amy will be our resident artist through the end of January, and then your exhibit installs February 9th and 10th to open on February 12th is the opening reception. So pretty soon. But anytime between now and February 12th, you'll be at the Firehouse on Fridays?
On Fridays and Saturdays.
Yep. Oh yeah, on Fridays and Saturdays from noon to 5 to chat with, ask questions, talk about your process. Thank you so much for doing this. Yes, this video we've recorded and will eventually be on our YouTube channel with the associated support links for anyone to try it. So that's really exciting for us because then we kind of create like a permanently available educational resource. So thank you. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you wanted to make sure and say before we take off?
Thank you all for watching and being here, and I'm excited to hear about what you all create through using this process. and what ideas you have. And I'm here with Brandy if anyone has questions.
Yeah, let me see. No, we may end up with questions at some point, but I think it's good just to say that we're available to answer questions because
Definitely.
it's a lot. I feel like learning new software can be kind of overwhelming, but I think just having a good place to start is helpful. Thank you so much.
Right. Yeah. And I gave a lot of information. Like Brandy said, there will be a information sheet that will be available. And additionally, I will be at Firehouse if you guys want to come in and chat with me about the process or ideas that you have or questions later on as well.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks, Brandy.
We'll see you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm gonna